Hi everyone, here's another 5 minutes of British literature to help with the reading for this week. Let's talk about one of the biggest events of the Middle Ages, the Black Death. The Black Death was the worst natural disaster to hit Europe and the British Isles during the Middle Ages. This region was already reeling from the Great Famine that had begun back in 1315, and the Black Death accelerated the population decline that the famine had started. Being on an island, the English depended on shipping for much of their trade, so when ships carrying the bubonic plague crossed the English Channel in the summer of 1348, it entered at multiple points at around the same time. By winter, the plague reached London, which at the time was the center of English government, culture, and commerce. It quickly spread to the rest of the country and killed a third to a half of the population over the following year. Much of the country was left without enough laborers to tend to the crops, which led to food being scarcer and more expensive. There weren't enough surviving priests to perform church rites, which left people unable to get married or have their children baptized or receive the last rites. Subsequent outbreaks of bubonic plague ripped through England over the next few decades, and England wouldn't be able to recover from the population loss until the 16th century. For better and worse, the devastation of the Black Death created a tsunami of social change in medieval England. In the aftermath of the first 2 to 3 waves, labor shortages led to a substantial increase in wages for those who survived, and in a lot of the country, free laborers enjoyed bargaining powers that they had never had before. Workers could afford a suitable diet and a higher quality of life, and they could negotiate for more time off and better working conditions in their contracts. More work opportunities opened up in depopulated cities, which drew both men and women from more rural areas in search of better prospects. Women's lives changed significantly with these opportunities. Since they were more likely to survive the plague, they were also more likely to be widowed and less likely to marry or remarry. On average, women in post-plague medieval England married in their mid to late 20s, much older than they had at the beginning of the 14th century. And they tended to have fewer children than they had before the Great Famine and the Black Death. As a result, many women had unprecedented time, money, and opportunity to pursue activities outside their houses and families. They started businesses, moved to cities, went on pilgrimages, and took on more leadership roles in their communities and parish churches. At the same time, the Black Death took a heavy toll on the English's mental health and on their communities. A generation of English went through the horror of seeing up to half the people in their lives die, suddenly and gruesomely. They had to nurse the victims, bury the dead, and figure out how to provide for the survivors, all while taking the risk that they could be next. No one knew for sure how the plague spread, or how to prevent it, or how to treat it. As a result, many communities socially collapsed as people avoided each other, fought over what little relief was available, or just fled. A lot of people turned to religion for solace and hope and meaning. Even as confidence in the institution of the church was falling, religiosity seems to have increased, as more people channeled their spirituality into forms of worship that offered what they felt was a more personal relationship with God. These trends are important to bear in mind as we read late medieval texts. In different ways, the Black Death hovers in the background of this period's literature, and its authors' lives were all touched by this event. On one level, works from Sir Gawain and the Green Knight to A Vision Showed to a Devout Woman to the Canterbury Tales are major landmarks in a connected British literary tradition. However, they are all produced during a time of national trauma and social upheaval. Therefore, on another level, we should consider what these texts show us about how people coped with the blessing and the curse of living in interesting times. Thanks for watching, and be sure to watch the video on religion and the church for this week as well.